My name is Professor Schmidt. I wanted to talk to you briefly about globalization. My mission is to tell you why globalization is bad. Um, Globalization is really people around the earth more connected to each other than ever before, a lot of money and information flowing more quickly and in greater amounts than ever. Goods and services that are produced in one part of the world available all over the world, more international travel, more international communication, and everything interconnected. Let me talk about why this is bad for culture. Um, there is a new emerging world culture, as it's called, but it's not a real culture. World culture is really mostly the spreading of Western culture, blue jeans, McDonald's, and other things to all of the rest of the world. Very often it changes the culture of the countries where this new world culture comes and undermines them, undermines their music, and undermines their food and a lot of other habits, and so it often destroys their culture. Um, in some ways, it is Western values that are forced on other societies. Um, in the financial area, um, this globalization may also not be very good. There's a lot of external financing, international investment, and it comes into countries in huge amounts and distorts the real internal economies because it comes from the outside. And when it suddenly becomes afraid or nervous about those countries, this external financing leaves, and it leaves the countries then underfunded and in debt and in very bad shape because external and international financing is very fast to move from one place to another. The interconnection of markets, of markets in terms of products and services, also creates a lot of interdependence. And so, when countries are very dependent on each other, if one country becomes infected with a financial crisis, then it usually spreads from one country to another and becomes a world financial crisis. So um, that's not good either. Let me talk about labor, workers. Um, Globalization basically leads to the exploitation of foreign and usually poor workers. Um, there is a deterioration of protection for weaker nations, and people in those poor countries become cheap labor as factories move from the more industrialized countries. There is outsourcing, which means that the wealthier countries move their factories to cheap labor countries offshore, and that also has a negative consequence for the workers in the countries where, like the United States and Europe and others, where the factories are moving away. It makes the workers in those places much poorer and less well off. And it undermines labor unions, makes it hard for workers to organize because they know that if they organize and their salaries go up too much, the companies will shut down and move everything overseas. So that's not very good. Finally, let me talk about the negative effects of globalization to politics, political. Globalization, it is said, is an effort to standardize the planet um, and eventually maybe have the entire planet ruled by one big world government. That's kind of the extreme concern. Um, but globalization has also led to more terrorism, more global warming, actually a lot of nuclear proliferation where nuclear technology is spread around the world. Globalization has also led to the spread of diseases very quickly from one country to the next, so that the danger of a world epidemic is much bigger. And globalization also is leading to uncontrolled immigration and migration of people that are moving around. And therefore, overall, you could argue that globalization has taken the power away from people inside their countries where they have some control, and has placed it into an international environment where they have very little or no control. So you can reasonably argue that globalization is bad. Thank you very much.